So, under these aspects, we'll be looking at the connection between evangelical revivals in Europe and America and the anti-slavery movement. Then we'll also explore how Sierra Leone was founded as a home for freed slaves. Then we'll examine the growth of Christianity in Gold Coast, which is now Ghana. So, Christianity in Sierra Leone started with the evangelical revivals in Europe and America. So, from the second half of the 18th century, there was a fervent wave of evangelical spirits which developed in the United Kingdom, Europe, and the world, which inspired men and women with the missionary spirits to found religious societies whose members would go out to Africa and other lands in order to spread the Christianity. So they were to spread the message of the gospel, also render social services to the people, and then assist in the suppression of slavery and the slave trade. So these new movements considered such ventures to be their contribution to um, Europe's reparation for centuries of exploitation of Africa, and also for the reparation for the centuries of exploitation which the transatlantic slave trade has caused to African societies. So, among the early missionary movements, we have the early Protestant evangelical society, which was founded in Great Britain. So they were the first Baptist missionary societies. We also have the Church Missionary Society for the propagation of the gospel. Then we have the Wesleyan Missionary Society and what became known as the Presbyterian Missionary Society of the Church of Scotland. We also have similar organizations which were formed in several other European countries. And these missionary societies include the Basel Missionary Society, which was founded in Switzerland, and the Bremen Mission, that was founded in Germany. So the Evangelical Societies founded in the Americas included the Baptist Missionary Board and the Nova Scotian Methodist. I'm sure you've heard about the Nova Scotian Methodist, whose members went to work among the Maroons and who settled mainly in some parts of Liberia. So while the Protestant evangelical movements were gaining grounds in West Africa, we have similar movements which were being promoted by the Roman Catholic Church in Europe with the support of the propagation of the faith within the Vatican, whose cardinal secretary at that point was Pope Gregory the 16th, and he was one that founded the Roman Catholic Missionary Societies. So among these, we also have the Congregation of the Holy Ghost, which is commonly known as the Holy Ghost Father. Then we have the Society of African Mission, that's the SMA. Basically, if you're looking at the abbreviation. Then the Society of Missionaries of Africa, which was popularly known as the White Fathers, because of the white Muslim like clothing which the fathers normally put on, and also the Society of the Divine Word, which is abbreviated in Latin as the SVD. So these missionary societies laid the foundation of the Roman Catholic Church in West Africa, which lasted through to the independence period when African clergy replaced the white pastor. So basically, the evangelical revival refers to a series of religious movements in 18th to 19th century Europe and America. So these revivals emphasized personal conversion, piety and holiness, active social reform. We have some major revival leaders, which included John Wesley, um, George Whitefield, and the rest. So let's look at the establishment of Christianity in Sierra Leone, basically the establishment of Christian Church in Sierra Leone. So in Sierra Leone, we have the Church Missionary Society, that's the CMS, which was an offshoot of the Anglican Church, and it was the first to become firmly established among the freed captive or the freed slave settlers from Britain, Nova Scotia, and other parts of the New World, or let's say from other parts of the Western world instead of using the New World. So these missionary societies were followed by other major missionary bodies, including the Methodists and the Roman Catholics, as they could not recruit British missionary volunteers initially. So the Church Missionary Society sponsored the services of German missionaries who were Lutherans to come out to Sierra Leone. So the first batch who came out between 1804 and 1806 included pioneer missionaries like Renner and Nylander. So we also have another important German missionary who was known by the name William Johansen, who was better known by the English version of his name as William Johnson. So he's known to revert the history of the CMS in West Africa. So the Methodists, known as the Wesleyan missionary, after their founders arrived in Freetown, which is Sierra Leone, in 1811. So their converts increased steadily in numbers until 1821, when a section broke away to form the first independent African Christian church in West Africa, which was known by the name the West African Methodist Church. So, in spite of the division, the Parents Missionary Church, which is the Parents Methodist Missionary Church, played an important role in the history of Christianity in Sierra Leone. So the next major Christian missionaries to go out to Sierra Leone were the Roman Catholics. You know that the first set was the Church Missionary Society, that's the CMS, which was an offshoot of the Anglican Church. So the next set, the next major Christian missionaries to go out to Sierra Leone would be the Roman Catholics. So after an unsuccessful beginning by the Society of African Missions, which is SMA, this missionary body moved into other territories in order what we have as Liberia. They moved into territories like Liberia, Ghana, and also Nigeria. So they were replaced in Sierra Leone by the Holy Ghost Fathers in 1864, who made converts in large numbers, not only among the pagans but also among the members of the then competing Christian churches like the Methodists, the Roman Catholic missionaries, and the rest. So now let's consider the role of the anti-slavery movements in founding Sierra Leone. We have some anti-slavery movements that aided the founding of Sierra Leone. In 1786, we have the abolitionists from the British Parliament was William Wilberforce, who founded the Society for Effecting the Abolition of the Slave Trade. So the consequences of the anti-slavery movement led to the establishment of the Sierra Leone colony, because many of the free slaves were languishing in Canada and England, and they needed a place to live their new life. So Freetown, which is now the capital of Sierra Leone, was chosen as the new word for the freed slaves on April 8, 1787. Please take note of the dates. This is April 8, 1787. That was when Freetown, which is the capital of Sierra Leone, was picked to be the inhabitants or the place for the free slaves to settle in. So the first group of free slaves that left for Freetown to found what became the Sierra Leone colony was around that 1787. So we have other groups like the Nova Scotians, Maroons, and other recaptives from USA, UK, and other places who settled in Freetown also. So as a British colony, the Freetown Street name were given British names in order to affirm the settlement's close connection to Britain. So the colony's currency of dollars and cents was then changed to pounds, shilling, and also pence. And then also the postal services were established between the colony, Europe, and West India. So it was inevitable that a British form of education would be introduced into the colony. So in 1814, when Governor Charles McCarthy became the colony's governor, he pushed for education and religion, which he thought would bring the colonies within the pale of Western civilization. So moving down to the founding of Sierra Leone and the planting of Christianity. But before that, the anti-slavery movement, I've not mentioned the key organizations of the anti-slavery movement. The key organizations there include the Clapham sect in Britain. Then we have the British and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society. Then we have the Freed Slave and Christian Abolitionists, which partnered in missionary efforts. So these were the key organizations that aided in the abolitions of slave trade in West Africa and also Africa also. So for the founding of Sierra Leone and the planting of Christianity, The colony of Sierra Leone was conceived by British philanthropists and abolitionists as a home for African slaves who were freed in England. So we have how a Temne king sold a strip of land on the north shore of the Sierra Leone Peninsula to the Sierra Leone Company for the free community of settlers. So they also he also the king also sold it to enable the heirs and successors of the free slaves to inhabit. So a few years later, the settlers were also joined by settlers of African origin from other parts of the empire. So therefore, Sierra Leone became a British crown colony in 1808. So throughout the 19th century, the colony steadily grew through various stretches of friendship and secession from the local chiefs. So after the British slave trade, which was abolished in 1807, the new colony was used as a base from which the acts could be enforced, which began in 1808, whereby hundreds of slaves were freed each year, most of them remaining in Sierra Leone. So Sierra Leone achieved its independence on 27th April 1961. So, considering the activities of the various mission groups in Sierra Leone, okay, the activities of the various mission groups in Sierra Leone, we have the attention of Christian missions in Ghana also. That is how the attention of Christian missions up to 1800 had been concentrated on Ghana, but thereafter the emphasis shifted to Sierra Leone. So the first step was taken by Reverend Morville. First step was taken by Reverend Morville Horn, an Anglican priest who was sent to Sierra Leone in 1792, hoping to be the chaplain to the European traders in order to care for the needs of the Negro immigrants, and then finally to be a missionary to the local population. Then we have how the Gold Coast was a region of European commercial activity for the Portuguese, Dutch, and then the British. Then we have Christian missions, in the which intensified in the 19th century British influence. After British influence grew. Then we also have the Basel mission, that is from Switzerland, and also the Methodist missionaries that were active in evangelism. So okay, let's quickly move on to how Christianity was established in Gold Coast, which is now Ghana. Okay, so by the mention of Orthodox Christian churches in Ghana, the person can refer to the Roman Catholic, Anglican, Beza, which is now known as the Presbyterian. We also have the Bremen or Northern German. Then we have the Wesleyan Methodist Mission. So the Christian mission immediately after establishing their basis at Elmina, which was the first place they went to. Okay, for the planting of Christianity in the Gold Coast, which is Ghana, we have how the Gold Coast, which is present day Ghana, was another region where Christianity was introduced during the 19th century. So European missionaries, particularly from the Basel Mission and the Wesleyan Mission, established themselves in the Gold Coast and they began to spread Christianity. So these missionaries not only introduced Christianity but also promoted education, healthcare, and economic development. So the planting of Christianity in the Gold Coast was a gradual process that involved the work of many missionaries and local converts. So the Basel Mission, which was established in the Gold Coast in the early 19th century, played a significant role in introducing Christianity to the local populations. So the missionaries also established schools, churches, and other social institutions which improved the lives of the local population and also helped to spread the Christian faith. So, looking at the missionary activities in the Gold Coast, we have the first successful mission which began around 1835, and the key focus here was converting the local people to Christianity and also promoting literacy and education in that region. Then we also have the Bible translation into local languages like the Twi language. Then we have the churches and schools that were established in Cape Coast, Accra, and Kumasi. So the Christian mission immediately after establishing their bases at Elmina, which is Catholic, and Cape Coast, which is the Methodist, respectively. They decided to extend their faith to Ashanti, which is the coastal towns. So this was done because of their early contact with Europeans who accepted Christianity without any major recorded squabbles. So the Ashanti were ready to accept a foreign religion. So in November 1838, around that 1835, 1838, when the Methodist Church was only 44 months old in Ghana, its members and circuit minister, who goes by the name Reverend Thomas Burke Freeman, resolved to extend the church to Ashanti in the forest zone of Ghana. So the Ashanti, by their religious thoughts and practices, were animist and polytheist. Then we also have in the second half of the 1830s when Methodism was the Christian way of life at the Fante and Ga coast. So these names, these Ghana names that I'm mentioning are not really relevant. But just know that the first place that the Christians, the European mission came to was Elmina, which is the gold mine. So this was done around 1482 by some Catholic priests who accompanied the Portuguese immigrants who arrived in the Gold Coast in January 1842. 1482, sorry. So looking at the role of African converts, looking at the role of African converts in the planting of Christianity in the Gold Coast, we have how African converts were essential in spreading Christianity. Then we have the Creoles from Sierra Leone who moved to the Gold Coast as missionaries and teachers. Sorry, the spelling on my screen is Krios, but the actual spelling is Creoles. That's the Creoles, not the spelling that is on my screen. So they also helped to bridge the cultural gaps and also extend Christianity inland. So, looking at the role of the church in the development of Ghana, wherever the Christian mission established several socio-economic institutions in Ghana as a medium of evangelization and conversion of the people to Christianity. So, these institutions were educational facilities at the basic and second cycle levels. They also have healthcare delivery units and then industrial or economic institutions. So these activities of the Christian missions had a tremendous impact on the people of Ghana, both positively and negatively. So looking at the positive influence which outweighed the negative ones, we have how many educational institutions were established by the Christian mission starting from the coastal towns of Ghana, which is the central region, which was then referred to as the citadel of education because of the many schools in that particular region. So the region boasts of schools such as the St. Augustine's College, the Wesley Girls High, and the Adisa Dale College, among others. So Ashanti and the northern regions remained largely illiterate up to the end of the 19th century. So it was because of the Ashanti denial of its citizens Western education. That's the Ashanti people denied their citizens of Western educations that led to their delay of being educated up to the 19th century. Then we also have another positive influence that is the employment in European commerce, industry, teaching, security services, and then the churches. Whereby the Ashanti refused to be touched by those modernizing social forces because they were still drumming and dancing kete in the forest back then. So that was that. So looking at many Ghanaians, they became formally educated through the work of Christian missions. So they also acquired skills which they used to acquire decent means of livelihood as they contributed to local, regional, and national development at various levels. So, what are the achievements of Christianity in the Gold Coast? One major achievement of Christianity in the Gold Coast, which is Ghana, is the provision of or the introduction of Western education to that region because the people of Ghana at that time they were illiterate. That means they were not educated at that point. So the missionary society brought about schools, clinics, and churches also which was established in that region. They also translated the Bible from the European language to the Twi and Gal languages. Then we have how illiterate Christian elites emerged, influencing education and politics as a result of the establishment of Christianity in Gold Coast. So we have some questions that we'll consider, but before that, what are the impacts of Christianity? What are the impacts of Christianity in both Sierra Leone and Gold Coast? First, the impact of Christianity on the Gold Coast was significant because many Africans were attracted to the new faith, which offered a sense of community, education, and economic opportunities. So, the spread of Christianity also led to cultural changes as local populations had to adapt to European customs and practices. So, the introduction of Christianity had a significant impact on the local populations in Sierra Leone and Gold Coast, basically. So the question now that we're considering is how did evangelical revival contribute to ending the slave trade? How did evangelical revival contribute to ending the slave trade? So the answer to that question is that the evangelical revival significantly contributed to ending the slave trade by raising awareness in the sense that the evangelicals like Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce exposed the horrors of the slave trade by gathering evidence and testimonies from former slaves. Then they also did that by influencing policy in the sense that Wilberforce, who was a prominent evangelical leader, presented bills to Parliament which aimed to abolish the slave trade and also led to the Slave Trade Act of 1807. They also did that by promoting moral accountability, by building a broad coalition, and then by mobilizing public opinion. So the second question there is why was Sierra Leone chosen as a site for freed slave? Sierra Leone was chosen as a site for free slave because Sierra Leone had a coastal location which made it an ideal site for a settlement for free slave, and also because the area provided access to the Atlantic Ocean and also facilitated the trade and communication with the Europe and other parts of Africa, and also because of British interests, climate and geography, and also the existing infrastructure and the likes at that area. Then the third question is, in what ways who's this? Okay. So the third question is, in what ways did African converts help missionary efforts in the Gold Coast? In what ways did African converts help missionary efforts in the Gold Coast? Sorry, after this discussion question, I'll just have a quick summary of what I discussed earlier. For those that are just joining, so I'll just know about what I was talking about. So, in what ways did African converts help missionary efforts in the Gold Coast? One way was through language and cultural expertise. They did so by helping missionaries to understand the local languages, customs, and traditions, and also facilitating effective communication and evangelism. They also did that by evangelism and outreach through translation and literature and through community building. And um, they also helped the missionary efforts in the Gold Coast through leadership and empowerment. So, for the summary of the establishment of Christianity in Sierra Leone and Ghana, let me quickly summarize what I said earlier. So, I started with the lesson overview, where I said we will understand the connection between evangelical revivals and anti-slavery movements. Then we'll explore how Sierra Leone was founded as a home for free slaves. Then we'll also examine the introduction and growth of Christianity in the Gold Coast, which is now Ghana. So for the evangelical revivals, that's the introduction. That's how the evangelical revival movement, which began in Europe and North America in the 18th century, was a significant turning point in the history of Christianity. So these movements emphasized personal conversion, evangelism, and social reforms, which led to a renewed focus on spreading the Christian faith in West Africa and other parts of the world. So in West Africa, particularly in Sierra Leone and the Gold Coast, evangelical missionaries played a crucial role in introducing Christianity to the local population. Okay, sorry for that. So the evangelical revival movement was characterized by a strong emphasis on personal conversion, whereby individuals were encouraged to make a conscious decisions to follow Jesus Christ. So this emphasis on personal conversion led to a renewed focus on evangelism because missionaries and local converts sought to share the Christian message with others. So in Sierra Leone and the Gold Coast, evangelical missionaries established themselves in various locations by preaching the gospel and then establishing churches. So the impact of the evangelical revival movements in Sierra Leone and the Gold Coast was significant because many Africans were attracted to the new faith, which offered a sense of community, education, and economic opportunities. So this movement also led to the establishment of schools, hospitals, and other social institutions, which improved the lives of local populations. So, looking at the anti slavery movement, that is the transatlantic slave trade, which was a significant issue in West Africa during the 18th and the 19th centuries. So, millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes and sold into slavery in the Americas, which led to a devastating impact on African communities. So the anti-slavery movement, which gained momentum in Europe and North America, aimed to abolish the slave trade and also emancipate enslaved Africans. So in Sierra Leone, the founding of the colony was closely tied to the anti-slavery movement because the Sierra Leone Company was established by the British philanthropists, which aimed to create a settlement whereby freed slaves could live and work, like live freely without the fear of being taken into captive. So the colony became a hub for missionary activity and a center for the spread of Christianity in West Africa. So basically, the anti-slavery movement in Sierra Leone and the Gold Coast was led by prominent abolitionists such as Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce. So these individuals worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the horrors of the slave trade and then to push for its abolition. So their efforts ultimately led to the passage of the Slave Trade Act in 1807, which abolished the slave trade in the British Empire. Then, for the founding of Sierra Leone, a background overview of the founding of Sierra Leone. So, Sierra Leone was founded in 1792 by British abolitionists as a colony for freed slaves. So, the Sierra Leone Company, established by the British philanthropists, aimed to create a settlement whereby freed slaves could live and work. So, the colony was established on the principle of freedom, justice, and equality, and it became a beacon of hope for Africans and Europeans alike. So basically, the founding of Sierra Leone was a significant event in the history of West Africa because the colony provided a safe haven for freed slaves who were able to rebuild their lives and establish new communities. So the colony also became a center for missionary activity as Christian missionaries sought to spread the gospel to the local populations. Then we have how the early years of the Sierra Leone colony was marked by significant challenges, including conflicts with local African leaders and struggles to establish a stable economy. Then we have how the colony preserved its force by thriving community of free slaves and Christian converts. Then looking at the missionary opportunities in Sierra Leone, we looked at how Freetown, which was the capital of Sierra Leone, became a base for Christian mission work in West Africa. Then we also looked at how the Church Missionary Society, which is the CMS, and others saw Sierra Leone as a Christian colony. Then we have the freed slave, which is Creos. Like I mentioned, the spelling there is Creoles, not the one on my screen. That's Krios, which the free slaves spread Christianity to the interior. Then we have our schools, churches, and also healthcare facilities were established in Sierra Leone, which was a missionary opportunity. Then we have some Christian institutions in Sierra Leone, some Christian institutions that were established by the Christian missionaries in Sierra Leone. And these Christian institutions include the Foral Bay College that was established in 1827. So this Foral Bay College was known as the first Western style university in West Africa. Then we also have how Christian education and literacy promoted sorry, we have how Christian education and literacy was promoted using English and local languages. Then we also have how Christian trios became teachers, clergy, and civil servants across West Africa. So moving on to the planting of Christianity in Gold Coast. Well, how the Gold Coast, which is present day Ghana, was another region where Christianity was introduced during the 19th century. So European missionaries, particularly from the Basel Mission and the Wesleyan Mission, established themselves in the Gold Coast and they began to spread Christianity. So the missionaries not only introduced Christianity but also promoted education, healthcare, and economic development. So the planting of Christianity in the Gold Coast was a gradual process that involved the work of many missionaries and local converts. So the Basel Mission, which was established in the Gold Coast in the early 19th century, played a significant role in introducing Christianity to the local populations. Then we also have how the missionaries established schools, churches, and other social institutions, which helped in improving the lives of local populations in Gold Coast, Ghana, and also helped to spread the Christian faith. So the impact of Christianity on the Gold Coast was significant because many Africans were attracted to the new faith, which offered a sense of community, education, and economic opportunities. So the spread of Christianity also led to cultural changes because local populations had to adapt to European customs and practices. So, for the impact of Christianity on local populations, we have how the introduction of Christianity had a significant impact on the local populations of Gold Coast. They are looking at the missionary activities in the Gold Coast. The first successful missionary activity in the Gold Coast began around 1835, and its major focus was on the conversion of the local populations to Christianity, the improvement of the literacy level of the local population, and then the Bible translation into local languages like the Twi language in Gold Coast, Ghana. Then we also have how churches and schools were established in Cape Coast, Accra, and Kumasi as part of the missionary activities in the Gold Coast. So now, what are the roles of African converts? Like I mentioned earlier, one role of the African converts was to aid in spreading Christianity in that region and also to help in mobilizing the local populations in several works like missionary and teaching. And also they helped in bridging the cultural gaps and also extend Christianity in land. So these were the roles of African converts in that area. So looking at the achievements of Christianity in the Gold Coast, one major achievement of Christianity in Gold Coast was the establishment of schools, clinics, and churches which were established in that region. Another achievement is the translation of the Bible into two particular languages, that's the Twi and the Ga languages. Then we have the literate Christian elites, which emerged and also influenced education and politics. So basically, these were the overview that I mentioned earlier. This basically is summary of what I mentioned earlier. So looking at the summary of the key points, one summary then is how the evangelical revivals fueled global missions and anti-slavery. Then the other one is how Sierra Leone became a model Christian colony for freed slaves. Then lastly, how the Gold Coast embraced Christianity through missions, educations, and African converts. So if you have any question now, you can ask your question. I'll continue. Okay. With regards to no question, I think I can call the lesson to an end or put the lesson to an end since the topic is not that deep. So in our next lesson we'll be considering another topic on CRS. So basically I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you and good night.